Good evening and welcome to the Lopatcong Township Planning Board for February 2018. At this time, I'd like to invite you to join us in the silent moment of prayer, immediately followed by the oath of allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'm required to state that this meeting has been provided indicating the time and place of the meeting in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, by advertising a notice in the Star Gazette and the Express Times, and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Members: Korea.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Chesky.
Yes.
Pryor.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Weeks.
Here.
Chairman Gucci.
Here.
Vice Chairman Fishback.
Here.
Chairman Bensley.
Here.
Alderman Sauer.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to switch to new business and the old business in order to kind of get the evening going along on an even keel. So at this time, Paul, I'll defer to you on the K&S Enterprises Block 100 Lot 2 amended site plan for completeness.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had issued a report on February 16th with my colleague Adam Wisniewski, who's here in the audience tonight, and we had analyzed the administrative aspects of that particular application, which is for preliminary and final major site plan approval, and that's for the site on Strikers Road just south of the railroad tracks. There's a trucking operation on that property, and there's a proposal to construct some additional buildings and parking areas on that property in accordance with the site plan application. The conclusion in our February 16th letter was that there were a number of deficiencies associated with the application, and Adam and I had recommended that the application be deemed incomplete. The most notable deficiency is the lack of a consistency determination from the Highlands Regional, the Highlands Council. Without further ado, I would recommend that you deem that application to be incomplete tonight.
Any questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to deem the application incomplete.
Motion.
Do I hear a second? Beth, roll call, please.
Second.
Eric.
Thank you. Yes. Members: Korea.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Chesky.
Yes.
Pryor.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman Gucci.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Fishback.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Next order of business coming up will be Autumn Ridge at Lopatcong, Block 116, lots 26.01, 27, 27.02, and 28 for completeness and hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe I'm likely conflicted out on this one. My daughter has been noticed on this development. I look for some guidance from the attorney.
Yes, Mr. Pryor, we did take a look at the case law. There seems to be a case on point with a member who has a family member that lives within 200 feet of an application. Because that family member is an interested member, that case suggests that you as a member have a relationship that is different than other members of the board, and the village division would suggest that you do have a conflict of interest.
All right, I will recuse myself and leave the hearing, and I would like to return for the rest of the business. You think 9:30 is a good time?
I'm going to indicate to the applicant that since we're delaying business of the board in order to get the applicant going, that we'll cut off any further presentation at 9:30 if you're in agreement to that.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd have to start it from here again. So
No.
if that's agreeable to you, then we'll set 9:30 as the date at the time that you would we'll stop the discussion on it, because I think there's other issues involved also about subdivision and that type of thing.
That's correct. We'll do our best to get rolling and see how far we get.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the attorney, I bought a house with my wife in 1994 from Larkin, and I also did get a mortgage that I do believe was a company that Larkin owned at the time, called IP Mortgage. So I don't know if, for those reasons, I should recuse myself from
Does the
proceeding.
mortgage still exist?
No.
Okay. And how long ago was the transaction?
We closed in March 95.
Okay. I think that type of business relationship that occurred so long ago, have you had any other interaction with Mr. Larkin since 1995, closing of that company?
I mean, from 95 to 97, we had a couple of things that had to be fixed in the house from the punch list. So
You're not personally friends with Mr. Larkin or have an ongoing relationship?
No, I'm not.
I don't believe that you suffered from disqualification.
The full disclosure, I also own a house which was built by Lucky Builders, which was purchased, I believe, 7 years ago.
Any ongoing type of relationship with Mr. Larkin?
Mr. Gardner, Larkin, no,
Okay. Any mortgage that subsists?
no.
Okay.
I
That was 7
think
years
the
ago? Same thing?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, business relationships, prior business relationships like that are arm's length transactions don't necessarily mean that there's a conflict. Simply because you know somebody or met somebody or had some type of interaction with them doesn't necessarily create a conflict.
Perfect.
As long as you guys don't have or harbor any type of, I guess, ill feelings towards Mr. Larkin or any of the applicants. because
No,
of
my
the
house is good.
Thank you for your full disclosure. Anyone else buy a house from Larkin? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ron Shimanowitz. I'm here on behalf of the applicant Larkin Associates LP. We're before you tonight on an application for preliminary and final site plan approval. We also did apply by way of an amended application for minor site plan approval, which implicated some variances. That part of the application you will not hear about tonight. Perhaps peripherally you'll hear about it, but since we did not notice for it, we're not going to present that part. It's sort of a technical variance to separate out the age-restricted area, but we'll concentrate on that after we give due notice, and come back and present the variances. But tonight you'll hear about the site plan in chief. As the chairman stated, the property that the board's considering tonight is known as lots 2601, 27, 2702, and 28 in block 116. The site has frontage on both Route 57 as well as Baltimore Street. It's about 16.5 acres in size. And the site is located in your multifamily inclusionary Roman numeral II zone. That zone was created out of the Mount Laurel litigation, the declaratory judgment by way of a settlement, which was approved by Judge Miller, and then we proceeded to the rezoning, which put us in a position to make the application to the planning board, which brought us to tonight. The application, or the site plan you'll hear about tonight, proposes 198 multifamily rental units in accordance with that settlement. The 190 units are broken down into different product types. There are 50 age-restricted apartments, there's 94 garden apartments, and there are 54 garage apartments. And of the total 198 units, 158 of those are market rate rental units. 40 of those are affordable housing units. So it's a 20% set aside, 20% of 198. Now, of the 40 affordable units, 10 of those are in the age-restricted development, and the other 40 are within the rental apartments. So it's all sort of broken down a little bit.
Meant 30?
30.
30?
Excuse me?
Sir, 30?
I'm sorry, I did my math wrong. Yeah, 10 and 30, my apologies. The access to the site is from both of our frontages, both Route 57 and Baltimore Street. I mentioned the minor subdivision and variances. You'll hear or see that in your consultant's review letters, but again, we won't get deep into that tonight. We do have the 2 review letters, one from Mr. Ritter and one from Mr. Sturbins, and we're prepared to address those after we present. Our presentation tonight is pretty concise. We have our site engineer, Mike Ford from Van Cleef. We have our architect and planner, Rob Larson from CPL, and we have our traffic engineer, Jay Troutman. There are representatives from the applicant here as well, the gardeners if need be, but it's really those 3 witnesses that would present the case tonight. So with the chair's permission, unless there's any other housekeeping...
We need to deem it complete first.
That's a great idea. I would appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, in our February 23rd letter, we had made a finding that all the checklist requirements associated with the preliminary and final site plan were addressed. So we recommend that you deem that aspect of the application complete, so you can move ahead with the hearing tonight on that. The minor subdivision application is incomplete, and you should deem that incomplete. And as Mr. Shimanowitz said, he's not going to discuss that tonight anyway, because he has to, I guess, revamp his application somewhat and reissue the notice.
Okay.
So deem the minor subdivision application incomplete, deem the preliminary and final site plan applications complete, so you can move ahead with the hearing.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to deem the site plan application complete.
Motion. Second.
Roll call, Beth, please.
Yes. Members Korea,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Orchowski.
Yes.
Pryor.
Mr. President, recuse himself.
Recused.
Yes.
Weeks.
Yes.
Mayor Migucci.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Fishback.
Here.
Chairman Bender.
Yes. And moving on, I would entertain a motion to deem the site plan application incomplete. Do I hear a motion? The subdivision,
I'll
subdivision.
second that motion.
Who made the motion?
Carlos.
I thought he seconded it.
Oh,
You did.
Who made it? I thought you made
Who
it.
made them? I'll
I
make a
didn't make
motion.
it. Okay.
Members Korea,
No.
Johnson,
Saying to deem it incomplete.
Incomplete,
To
sorry.
deem it
Sorry, yeah.
incomplete is yes for me, it's incomplete.
It's yes for me also, sorry.
Orchowski,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Weeks.
Yes.
Mayor Migucci.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Fishback.
Yes.
Chairman Bender.
yes.
Alternate Steinhardt.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that cleans that up, so would you please continue?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first witness is Mike Ford, our site engineer. Have Mr. Ford sworn.
You swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
Michael Ford, F-O-R-D, with Van Cleef Engineering Associates, licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. Here before many planning boards and zoning boards throughout the state.
I remember you from Franklin Township very often.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you'd like to hear more of Mr. Ford's qualifications. We're presenting him as an expert in site engineering and planning.
I believe he qualifies as an expert witness.
Thank you. Mike, before you get rolling, let's get your exhibits marked, and then we can get you up for some testimony.
You see that already?
Is that a good spot for everyone?
For us, yes.
Okay. On the left is the description of the exhibits, is actually a colorized rendition of sheet 2 that was submitted as part of the application entitled Existing Features Plan, last revised 12/20/17. And then on the right is
Mike,
a...
before you get to the right, let's mark that Exhibit A1.
Okay.
With today's date, please. And the next exhibit, if you could describe that and mark it as Exhibit A2.
This is, the exhibit on the right is sheet 3 from the set of plans that was submitted as part of the application, which has been colorized.
And that's effectively a colorized site plan? Is that
Yes,
a fair description of it?
Basically, it's the existing conditions on the left and the proposed conditions on the right.
Excellent. I'm going to turn it over to you if you can describe the site to the board, the existing conditions, and then roll right into the site plan proposal.
Okay. Good evening. This is, as was introduced already, an application for preliminary and final site plan for 198 units and consistent with the recently adopted multifamily 2 zoning criteria. 16.5 acres consisting of 4 lots, which will be consolidated as part of this application. There's frontage on Baltimore, and at the bottom of the page, Route 57. You can see in the colorized version here, we're surrounded by other multifamily projects, as well as commercial on Stryker. You might be familiar with the Warren Heights project. Our office actually did the work for the engineering on that in the late 90s, as well as the commercial on Stryker, a child care facility at the intersection of Stryker and Baltimore. And this one out parcel that's not part of the project was actually, I understand, the subject of a recent application for a multi-story self-storage project that's actually under construction now. Along the west side or left portion of the property, there's an existing water course, a tributary to the Lopatcong Creek. It's also known, I think, in some historic literature as the Dry Run. That has associated with a floodplain. The floodplain was actually delineated as part of the Warren Heights project. So the flood hazard and floodways are known and delineated, and the current regulations that require the 300-foot riparian zone have been identified on the project site plans. And through our iterations of the project layout, through conceptual subdivision or site plan layout, we worked with your staff basically to adhere and not impact those critical areas, and actually utilize some of the existing disturbances that are in that area now. There's an agricultural field as well as a pathway that goes from Route 57 to Baltimore that's within that restricted area. You'll see when I go to the site plan, we intend to convert those disturbed agricultural fields to both passive meadows, more close to the stream, as well as immediately adjacent to the residential units, some grass areas that can be used as informal play areas. So providing for some recreational space, as well as converting this existing informal driveway, it's like a dirt road, into a pedestrian path that links the western portion of the project from Route 57 to Baltimore, and provides for some more substantial circular pedestrian pathways rather than just the internal sidewalks themselves. There's multiple structures on the property. They'll all be removed. That includes greenhouses, commercial building on Route 57, as well as residential structures. There is a small portion immediately adjacent to the existing mini golf that's off-site. It's not part of the application, but there's a portion of the parking lot that services the mini golf that's within an easement on this property, and that portion of the pavement will be maintained, and we've identified that on the site plan. Okay, let me go to the proposed condition. On the proposed condition, you can see we've proposed, as was stated in the introduction, access ways, one access driveway at Route 57, one access driveway at Baltimore. Both accesses will be full movement. With regards to Route 57, we know we're under the jurisdiction of NJDOT. An application's been filed with NJDOT and it's been deemed complete in January, is into the technical review phase. To enhance that access driveway at Route 57, we provided like a separated boulevard, so a little landscaped area at that entrance. And the site sign will be located at that location as well. They're all apartment units. There's a 4-story senior apartment building immediately adjacent to the access driveway at Route 57. That's the 4-story, 50-unit building that Mr. Szymanowicz described in the introduction. That would be the age-restricted portion of the project. And then the unage-restricted portion of the project is consistent of apartments, both with and without garages. That is some of the apartment garages, and I think our other witness will be the architect that will speak to the specifics of the architecture of those units. Engineering. It's all serviced by public sewer and water. As part of the Warren Heights project, we brought public sewer and water down Baltimore, so that public sewer will be extended to service the entire project. That's all detailed out on our site plans, and we're anxious, once this board acts, to move on to our next step, which would be both, municipal and the sewage authority approval, and then on to DEP for a treatment works approval for the sewer extension. With regards to public water, it's Aqua. We've been in contact with them already. We actually have a process started with that application for the water main extension. Stormwater. What we're proposing is one stormwater detention basin. It's actually a bioretention basin. We're aware of the karst conditions that are throughout this area, so it would be a lined basin with implementing the more enhanced NJDEP best management practices. That is, it's not just a plain grass bottom. This would be a bottom of a basin over top of that liner that would have a substantial planting thickness mix that would support more, I'll say, sophisticated vegetation other than just grass, to provide some enhanced treatment of the stormwater. And then once it goes through that filter media with that vegetation, it's actually collected in part of the discharge. So there's, that liner would prevent any opportunities for the water to seep into the ground and potentially cause issues with the karst conditions. We're also proposing a community building, approximately 2,000 square feet in size, with a pool next to it. That would be to service the non-age restricted portion of the project. There's also a pool proposed immediately to the east of the 4-story age-restricted building that would primarily service that facility. That would also have some indoor recreational facilities. And then immediately adjacent to the 2,000 square foot commercial or community building is the patio area surrounding the pool, as well as a tot lot that would include structures, and this is athletic structures that would handle both younger kids and toddler age, and then older youth. And at this point, I'd like to go right to maybe one of the review memos suggesting specifics about those play equipment and their certifications and what they would have to adhere to, specifically safety regulations. And we'd comply with all those requests that are in your professionals' review memorandums. In fact, both the 21st and the 23rd review memorandums from Mr. Ritter and Mr. Sturbins don't pose any issues for this applicant. That is, all the suggestions with changes or enhancements to the landscaping, all of the detailed, I'll say, gearhead engineering aspects of the multiple pages in Mr. Sturbins' letter will address to his satisfaction, including, blow-up details of all the crosswalks to completely clarify and demonstrate compliance with ADA regulations. With regards to this area that I described a moment ago, immediately adjacent to the stream, I told you that we're converting the existing agricultural field. It's like a mowed hay field that really wouldn't be suitable for, say, play today, but it would need just some minor changes to the lawn area to make it suitable for an informal field. The area is really not large enough for a more formal field, like a soccer field or a baseball field. We don't envision that, but it's certainly big enough to provide for outdoor recreational space for this community. And then that pathway that we would convert to a pedestrian pathway, we brought up to circle around the detention basin and then link up at various locations with the internal sidewalks that would be on both sides of the driveways that circulate through the community. With regards to tree disturbance, you can see on the existing condition rendering, we have some existing trees that are in that critical flood hazard area. We're not proposing to disturb or touch any of those. So those trees would be left alone. Only those trees immediately adjacent to the existing structures would be removed. In fact, there's just because of regrading over here, we're disturbing some trees immediately to the east of the senior building, but we would be replacing and supplementing that to provide a vegetative buffer between us and our neighbors to the east. And again, there was some suggestions to provide some understory shrubbery. Right now, the planting schedule on the landscape plan calls for evergreens and deciduous trees. There's been a suggestion to provide for some understory shrubs to enhance that buffer, and we would comply with that suggestion as well. Also, with regards to pedestrian linkage, there was a suggestion, this wasn't part of the initial application, but we met with your staff in January and made some, I'll say, substantial changes and enhancements to the project. One of those included a pedestrian linkage to the existing commercial off-site facility that's at the intersection of Stryker and Route 57. This would be a pedestrian linkage. There was a suggestion to consider a driveway linkage, but because of the differential in grade, that driveway linkage would be substantially steep and really not suitable, but we would comply with the suggestion for the pedestrian linkage. And that would be to a facility that's controlled by the applicant, so we would be able to provide for the access easements and the construction to make that linkage happen. It's not like we have to go to someone else and get their permission. So what you see on the plan will happen. The apartment buildings include, or the 4-story age-restricted apartment building includes a portico share drop-off area for those residents, as well as parking both to the north and south of it to provide for easy access of those residents to the building. Throughout the rest of the community, we have the apartment buildings along the west and north portion of the property that don't have garages, and that's where the on-site parking areas are provided. And then you'll see on the one driveway that's on the east side of the site where the apartments would have the garages and driveway parking ability. There's also intermittent parking spaces along that driveway to provide for guests parking. We've complied with all your parking requirements. One suggestion by Mazer Consulting was, although we comply with the required minimum amount of handicap parking spaces, for this number of parking spaces on this site, we're required to have 8 handicap parking spaces. We do have 8 handicap parking spaces, and they're distributed throughout the site. But what was pointed out to us is that perhaps they could be additional handicap spaces provided and more closely located to not just in the middle of these 3 buildings, but in front of each building. I've had a discussion with Mr. Sturbins about how we could do that without losing any parking spaces, that we would still have the total number of parking spaces we have now, and actually probably take, one of the 2 handicap parking spaces in front of building 5 and one of the 2 handicap parking spaces in front of building 3 and move it to either in front of building 2 or 4, add a handicap parking space in front of the community building, and then add a handicap space in front of building 4. So, and this would be minor adjustments in a slight increase in impervious coverage just with the access aisle that's associated with handicap parking space. You know, a standard parking space is 9 feet wide. Handicap parking space is 8 plus the access aisle of either 8 or 5 feet wide. So, but we've actually already, since we've received the review memorandum, looked at these aspects of the site plan and feel we could comply with that suggestion as well. While the existing plan is still compliant, this is an enhancement. There was also, in January, subsequent to our meeting, some changes to the configuration of this parking area, and I think you may have seen it in Mr. Ritter's memorandum, where he referred to a site layout that had inefficient parking on one side of an access aisle and not on the other, which, provided additional impervious coverage, took up more green space, and what we've done since that meeting is come up with the plan you see here this evening, which includes both, double-loaded parking spaces, more efficient layout on either side of this main parking area, and that actually opened up and created some additional green space immediately adjacent to the community building. That's where we expanded that area to include the tot lot. It's somewhat central to the entire facility and brings all that pedestrian linkage to that focus area. Am I boring you guys?
Mike, are you?
That's an overview. Yeah.
Okay.
We've actually already been to the Warren County Planning Board. We received a conditional approval from them in December. We went to the Warren County Soil Conservation District and received their approval on February 14th. As I said, we've already got the completeness letter from NJDOT, and on February 23rd, we received a compliance letter with conditional items in it from the Highlands Council, and that was actually subsequent to not only our meeting with your staff in January, but we met with the Highlands Council, actually walked the site in February, and then had a meeting at the Highlands Council offices in Chester. I'll say honestly, my impression was they had a hard time finding issues with the plan. They felt that all of our changes and use of that existing green space that's in the floodplain area for recreational space and converting the agricultural to open fields was good. They've made some suggestions that I think are actually consistent with the suggestions made by Mr. Ritter and Mr. Sturbins regarding enhancements to landscaping and perhaps some supplemental stormwater measures, and we'll comply with all those suggestions as well.
The letter, Mike, from the Highlands Council was a consistency determination, is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
And just two quick follow-up questions, it's almost one question. With regard to signage, the review letters call out that the proposed sign on Route 57 exceeds the height. Is it the case that the applicant's willing to reduce the height of that sign to make it compliant? Could you speak to that?
That's correct. Yes, the one variance that was cited in the review memorandum regarding the preliminary and final site plan, and this is our only variance with regards to that aspect of the application, was the height of the sign. We actually took a sign that was used for the Warren Heights project and carried it over to this project. Well, 20 years later now, the height of the sign is a little more restrictive, and the maximum height is 5 feet, and the applicant would be willing to reduce the height of the sign to comply, and therefore the variance would not be required. So this would become a variance-free application.
And a related question, the plans we submitted do not show signage on Baltimore Street.
That's correct.
Could you speak to that, whether the applicant wishes to propose a sign and whether that sign would be conforming or not?
Yes, yeah, there's one community sign, Autumn Ridge at Lopatcong, that's our project name, and that is on the plan now. We would reduce the height of that to 5. We hadn't proposed as part of the initial application a sign at Baltimore, but we thought perhaps that would be good as well to identify people looking for the community when they have Warren Heights and other projects nearby. So we'd like to add a sign at Baltimore as well, likely a similar sign to the one at Route 57, a fully complying sign with the ordinance.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Mr. Ford.
Okay. Any questions from our professionals? George?
I only have one, and it has nothing, the presentation I thought was excellent. You mentioned that there was only one variance. I believe there's a second, which your architect may have to address, and that's on the storage. That's my only point.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But I will say that the applicant has spent a lot of time and actually made some significant changes to his plan to work out the parking areas, eliminate some of the excess pavement, and I think he's come a long ways from the initial sketch. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Paul?
I just have a few minor questions for Mr. Ford. I think he indicated he was going to address both of the review letters that were issued in their entirety. Just a couple items I wanted to review from the letter. Just 3.03, you're going to change the radius of that one street to get a 100-foot radius?
Yes, right here.
Okay.
We've
Yes.
looked at that already on the computer, and that'd be no substantive change to the plan, but we would comply, correct?
3.10, you're going to put a raised crosswalk or a speed table in?
Yes. On this main driveway, what was suggested is because the length of the street to provide some traffic calming measure,
Okay.
and we would comply with that suggestion as well.
3.12, you're going to provide curbing along the Route 57 frontage?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be, of course, subject to DOT. If they say no curb, we would have to acquiesce to them, but our intention would be to comply with that suggestion as well.
And then 3.17, if the Board of Education wanted to see some formality to the bus, if there's going to be busing through this development, you'll provide a bus shelter. I mean, we'll probably do some outreach to them,
Okay.
but I would assume that you're going to do that based on your previous testimony?
Yes, and we've actually, one of the requests was to we provide a fire truck turning template as part of the plans. We've been asked to provide a turning template for school buses as well that demonstrate they can clearly, traverse the application site, and we've actually already looked at that, and we'll comply with that request as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
I'll open it to the board. Any board members? Eric?
I have one question or a clarification. During your presentation, I think I heard you mention that both access points are going to allow for full movement.
Correct.
Which is the Baltimore Street and the Route 57.
Right.
But in your traffic impact study report on page 4, it actually says that Route 57 was analyzed with right-hand turn in and right-hand turn out only.
Yes, that's the original concept, I'll say, and submittal. This was actually another outcome of those discussions with your staff as well as our application to the county. The Warren County suggested that it be unrestricted movement, and that's how the application went into DEP, or DOT.
Would we be looking for an updated traffic report to account for that?
I would think that if the DOT approved it, that we really have no control over a state highway. And
Right.
if they approve it right in, right out, or a full movement interchange, we're going to go along with it as long as it meets their conditions. My only question would be, you're planning on putting an island area?
Yes.
In that, if it's a full movement? We've had several other instances of this with other projects. Paul, do you think it would be better to just stripe it off that way, or actually have a curb in there?
I don't like those islands. I think they inhibit movements. I'd rather not see an island if we could avoid that, to be honest with you.
No problem.
Obviously, it's up to the department. The department regulates the
That's no
ingress and
problem.
egress.
I would say we'd probably not have even it would be just a plain driveway with, not a striped island, if you will, either. And the sign that would is proposed for the project would be located on either side of the driveway.
You have freer
Compliance with
access,
it. Right.
better sight distance, you don't have this object or impediment in the center of the road that you have to work your way around, reduce signage, you have to have signage for the island.
Correct,
Yeah,
right.
so-
Yeah, keep right, do not enter, correct.
As long as the DOT goes along.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess a follow-up to that question, when DOT received this traffic study, were they aware that this was going to be a full movement
Yes.
intersection?
That was the application.
And they approved it, knowing that it was only a right-hand?
We've been deemed complete by DOT. It's going to take some time. It's a major access permit, so.
Okay.
And what I didn't say was, in our discussion with the county, we actually, the county was interested in what was happening at Route 57. We submitted the DOT plans to the county, and the county would prefer the full movement intersection as well. So they're in support of the current proposal. And if anything, I would think the one municipal road, if this were restricted in some way, which is the way the analysis was done for the traffic study, that would potentially cause more traffic at the municipal level. By making this unrestricted, the only real, I'll say, even change, if there were a change in the traffic report, would be more, traffic at the DOT's jurisdictional intersection.
And we do have our traffic engineer with us tonight, so he can weigh in on that as well. Hopefully, he agrees with all this discussion. I'm confident he will.
Brian?
Your detention pond, your new file, can you explain to me how you plan on cleaning that and maintaining that a little bit?
There's actually, which is kind of new now too, I'll say, in our industry in the last 5-10 years, the best management practices not only require a stormwater management report by us that demonstrates how the design has been pulled together, but we've actually also prepared an operation and maintenance manual for the basin. So that was submitted as part of the application. That'll go on the record and be part of the homeowners association's requirements to maintain that basin. With regards to the vegetation in the basin, it's not a manicured lawn. It's not like a low flow channel, concrete channel like you see in some, I'll say, older basins. This is more, and this is at the suggestion of DEP with enhanced water quality treatment, not just the quantity that we're worried about now, but it's grass that's only mowed once or twice a year. Yeah. And to some, it's more aesthetically pleasing.
And you'll keep records on that?
Correct. Actually, that's part of the operation and maintenance manual. Correct.
Yeah, the walking path that goes from Baltimore down and then loops back around, and I guess it actually comes out in between those buildings, I guess, again, and links in, am I correct, somewhere right in the middle?
Right here, yes.
Right,
So we have north, south, and right in the middle.
okay, and that allows everybody to go right around the whole
Correct.
facility?
Right.
Is that lit? Is there lighting on that?
We didn't propose lighting on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
just a question.
Yeah.
Any other further questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Our next witness is our architect, Mr. Rob Larson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One last question.
We're missing this hearing. Open it up to questions.
You want to go witness by witness?
Witness by witness would probably
Absolutely.
be the easiest way.
Okay, Rob, take a minute to go to the public with regard to
I have
Mr. Ford.
one question which I forgot to ask. The age-restricted unit, right? We talked about the handicap parking, right?
Right.
How many of the handicap parking are in front of the age-restricted unit?
4. So half of them are here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Does the public have any inquiries of this witness? Hearing none, please continue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we're going to call Mr. Rob Larson, our architect.
See if I can, I'll let you in. A little labyrinth to get in there.
Good evening, raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Just state your name for the record.
Sure. Robert Larson, Larsen.
And Rob, your qualifications, please.
I am a licensed architect and professional planner here in the state of New Jersey. I intend to testify likewise. I believe this is both last time for
little bit of planning testimony. I'm a member with the firm of Chester Pulisic Lasowski. Have been for the past 20 years. And
You testify as a licensed architect and expert before many boards, is that correct?
many boards, including this one.
Thank you. Except there was an expert with us.
Thank you. Rob, before you get rolling, I presume you have some exhibits as well? Let's get those marked. We're going to start with A3 with your exhibits.
Okay, I'm going to mark A3 with today's date, which will be the colorized front and side elevation of the garden apartment product.
Okay.
A4 will be the colorized elevation of the garage product. A5 is the colorized elevation. I apologize, A4 has front, side, and rear of the garage. A5 has the front and side of the age-restricted building. A6 is a bit of a lonely exhibit. Is the front elevation of the colorized front elevation of the recreation center.
Okay, take it away.
All right, so I will begin again describing that we do have effectively 4 structure types here, 3 residential structure types, and 1 is a standalone recreation center. The first product I'd like to discuss is the garden apartment product. There are these 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings of what we're calling the garden apartment product. These are effectively garden flats. There are 94 of them, and as Mr. Shimanowitz pointed out earlier, 30 of them are set aside for affordable housing, and the remaining 64 are market. Of those 64, 24 of them are 1 bedroom, and 40 of them are 2 bedroom. The affordable housing units that are within this particular product will be of a bedroom mix that is compliant with the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls. That is 20% maximum 1 bedroom or 6, 20% minimum 3 bedroom or 6, and the remaining units will be 2 bedroom, again in compliance with the UHAC standards. This is a 3-story structure. It is a wood frame building. It is intended to be sprinklered. It will not intended to be, it will require it to be sprinklered. There are 2 main access points to each and every one of these buildings. Of the 4 structures, 3 of them have 24 units. 1 of them has 22 units. That building, which I believe is on the site plan building number 2, has a remaining space which will be set aside as an additional 2,000 square feet of amenity for the market side of the project. The building, as you can see, is clad with a mixture of different materials, different siding colors, some brick, and again, various architectural detailing. These buildings are generally accessed from one side. These points of access are to some common staircases. These common staircases generally have about 12 units in each pod. And I will get to the point of the storage question in a little bit, but there are some small common areas of storage within each of these stair cores. I'm going to go quickly on to the next type of residential architecture. We have what we call a garage apartment, right? So as you can imagine, that means that each apartment has an attached 1-car garage and 1-car driveway. So that is each and every one of them. There are 54 of this type of apartment on the project. They are in the western buildings here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, serviced by a driveway and garage, with each having its own private entry. So where the garden apartments have some common stairs These each have their own private door. The private door gets you into a hallway, which then has access from the garage. So you're able to come home and go in your garage or come from the outside. 18 of these, 18 of the 54 are one bedroom, and the balance are two bedroom. None of these are set aside for affordable. The market rate affordable units are all within the garage apartments. These units are a little bit bigger than the others. Are meant to be, you know, we're creating a natural variety of what's available on the site. So we have 198 units, a lot of units, try to create some variety. If I can back up, the range on the market square footage for the 1 and 2 bedroom garden apartments is about 960 to 1195, and the garage apartments are 995 to 1295. So these are a little bit larger. Again, they come with a garage attached. They exist in a 2-story structure, a little bit more private living. Again, we're showing a mixture of siding and brick and different architectural detailing here, and as you can see, we've changed the color scheme. All of the architecture will be complementary throughout the site, so we're not, you know, making one very starkly different than the other, but we will change, you know, enough of the detailing and color to make them unique, so they'll be identifiable. Again, so we're looking at, just for information, when you're going along the drive aisle, this is what you're going to see here, which is called the front elevation. So that's what you're seeing as you're circulating along this internal road. What you would see from either the green space, if you were on this walkway that we've been discussing, or if you were on the back side of these units, would be this, which is noted as the rear elevation. You can see there's some private patios and like that, and again, windows from the units. And this is what you would see at these connectors in between on all of the ends. If I can move on to the third residential product. So I'm pointing now at Exhibit A5. This is the front, or the main entrance approach to the age-restricted building, and the side, a typical side of that building. As you can see here, we're dealing with now a 4-story building. What's different about this particular apartment style is it is on a common elevated hallway, right? So this is 4 stories, all serviced by a common lobby and an elevator getting you to each floor. Each and every unit is a flat, each and every unit is handicapped accessible. Again, this is a sprinkler building, wood frame, 4-story. As we look at it, we can see we have an identifiable porte cochere that is creating that single main entrance point here, and a variety of materials. Again, similar, you know, we have here I've actually chosen stone because the building is a different type. Ultimately, I'm sure my client will come up with a common marketing plan for all of the finishes, but I'm trying to relate a change in the level of architectural treatment to make each building identifiable. Each of these units, we have, as was mentioned earlier, 40 of these units are market and 10 are set aside for affordable. The Uniform Housing Affordability Control bedroom mix does not apply to an age-restricted in the same way. So we're proposing that half of the 10 are 1-bedroom and half of the 10 are 2-bedroom. There is no requirement for a 3-bedroom affordable age-restricted unit. The market rate units that are within this structure range in size from 915 square feet to 1,130. There are 28 of the market units that are 1-bedroom plus 10, and 12 which are 2-bedroom. Again, the affordable units are split 50-50, 1 and 2-bedroom. So if I can just speak to amenities a little bit before I get to the lonely little rendering of my recreation center. The age-restricted building has its own core amenities within the structure, right? So there's a community room, a lounge, a card room spread throughout the building. I believe they'll probably have a small gym in there that is to be used by the 50 units that are within the structure. They have their own private pool. As will be a topic of discussion, I understand at a different hearing, this has to be cut off as its own separate lot to be legally age-restricted, right? So there is an entire package of amenities that are associated with the units that are within here. and have been shown in my building level plans. It does have a main lobby with a mail room, a management office that can handle, people and coming in and out. It has, like I said, a community room that will be developed further to meet the needs of these tenants. It's my understanding that they will then, it's a one-way street, so the age-restricted people may be able to use some of those common area amenities that we're going to discuss in a minute that are in the other recreation building. The market rate, or the unrestricted people, will not be allowed into this building for use of these amenities. So that's sort of an advantage we're trying to create for this particular tenant and user. If I can go now to Exhibit A6. This is the recreation center right dead in the center of the project here, adjacent to the common pool. And I'm just showing you that main front elevation, again, grabbing some of that architecture from each of the buildings. It is 2,000 square feet. It is not a overly large recreation center. It is meant to serve as a really a space next to the pool. There will be leasing offices within this building and a large community room. So this is one component, 2,000 square feet of the recreation that will be available to the unage-restricted units. And as I said, there is an additional 2,000 square feet in building number 2 here at its end, which will have a gym and some other community facilities for management of this development. The matter of storage. So I did note the comment regarding storage from Mr. Ritter. And I have done some calculations to verify. So there's a missing component that we had intended to add. Now I'm adding through my testimony here. The basement, we intend to put a basement in the age-restricted building. That will meet all of the storage needs of the tenants of that particular building. The garaged units have garages that range in depth from 21 to about 26 feet, right? So the unit, 20 feet is a good depth for a garage. I think your professionals would agree. So anything beyond that is really, okay, you can use it for storage. So 1.5 feet is not really substantial enough. So there are 18 units that only have about a 21.5 foot depth. The other 2 have 24, 25, I think just shy of 26 foot of depth. So they have substantial availability for storage. So again, I'm happy to discuss this to be sure that I'm answering Mr. Ritter's concern, but of the garage units, only 18 of them seem to suffer from not that 250 cubic feet requirement. In terms of the garden apartments, the way we laid the buildings out is they're all the same, right? So we have this very buildable yet unique location of units off of those cores. And whenever I have some of those affordable units, right? So an affordable 1-bedroom is underneath a 2-bedroom market unit, I'm left with some space now. So we've turned that in various locations, if you look at the building plans, into opportunities for storage for units immediately in that area. As Mr. Ritter did point out, there's not enough in there to meet the 250 cubic feet. I believe my calculation is that of the 94, there would be 47 that would not have enough storage. So it is our intention to give access, and this will have to be something that's worked out with Mr. Ford, to the basement of the age-restricted building. This would have to be obviously worked out from the outside to create an entry that you're not going to bring everybody who lives in the community through the main lobby of the seniors. But it is something that I believe we can do to provide a staircase from the outside down into that basement. And for relative terms, we could have twice as big of a project and have every single need met in that basement alone. So there's more than sufficient space to create enough storage there. That is effectively my presentation. Again, we discussed the sign in terms of planner hat, and I'll be back, I guess, when we have the other meeting about the subdivision.
I just want to clarify and revisit the storage issue so we know what relief, if any, we're seeking. So as to the age-restricted building, it's the applicant's proposal to add a basement that would allow fully compliant storage per the ordinance. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. As to the garden apartments, you're saying certain of the, let me restate that. As to the garage apartments, certain of those in and of themselves are compliant by way of space in the garage area?
I feel yes.
Okay, and certain are not?
Correct. So about 2/3 appear to be compliant right now as they're designed, and 1/3 is about half of what would be required.
Okay, so in those instances of the 1/3 that are deficient, a variance is being sought, is that
No.
correct?
So we would propose to provide additional storage available to them and also in the basement of the age-restricted building.
Okay, and that's the same condition as to the regular garden apartments, the non-garage garden apartments. 47 of those would be deficient, but you're solving that by access to the basement of the age-restricted.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with that proposal, it's your position that a variance is not needed?
Yes, we would seek to not have a variance condition for the storage.
And as to the calculations you did to come up with what units are compliant and not compliant, you could provide those calculations to Mr. Ritter and to the board?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have nothing further, Mr. Larson.
George, any comment?
No, I think the applicant has addressed, one of my major concerns is that there was, at least in the initial submission, there was no storage for the seniors at all. Clearly, his proposal will open up significant areas for that type of thing. And if he can work out some cooperation that they can share some of that, I think that'll solve the problem. The numbers are very close for the garden apartments and for the garage apartments. So a little bit of excess in the seniors, I think, is fine, as long as he can work it out that they can have access to it.
Well,
I guess my only comment would be, or maybe it should be a question, does it make sense to perhaps put a basement or a partial basement in these other apartment areas where those residents could stay in those particular areas of the development to conduct their storage as opposed to going to what's going to be a completely different lot and block and a different population, so to speak?
There is, and it's actually something we explored. The unique situation with the age-restricted building is that it does have an elevator, and whenever we provide an area for common use, I must provide handicapped accessibility. So we had looked at, was there enough grade to kind of get an open story to get me downstairs without having the elevator? And the answer was no. It was very difficult for us to figure out how we can get in that basement and not create a ramp that's 12 feet long, 12 feet wide, a pit of ramp with drains. So we further discussed, we actually, to meet handicapped, as long as I am able to get people who require accessibility down there, which we could have, in that case, they could use the lobby, they could be assisted to come in the lobby. So there is proper access for someone who requires accessibility. So that was the advantage to utilizing that structure versus one of the garden apartments or the garage products.
Do you think that's going to be awkward? People from other areas of the development coming into this age-restricted building from time to time with their storage items?
It could be, again, we could...
I can address that one if you want. You want me to do that now?
Yeah, I think you should.
Why don't you come forward, David? You'll need to be sworn. You have Mr. Gardner sworn.
Good evening. Do you swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give the board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
David Gardner.
David, you're principal with the applicant Larkin Associates, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Feel free to address the storage issue.
We really want to do it all in that building, Paul. And when we had the meeting and you guys redesigned that whole parking, I thought we created like a nice area here where we were going to have, right? There was going to be access.
We'll have access there.
And we said we were going to create a ramp.
Well, that would be the stairway.
Inside the basement. Yeah, we actually thought from a operating management perspective, it would work. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I didn't even know about all those fancy rules with the ADA thing for the storage, but we first, if we're gonna go spend all this money to make that into a full basement, we could put a storage bin for every single unit on, I think you just said that.
Yeah, there's more than.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we think it would be actually a kind of a controlled management thing. We could put security cameras down there. And there's a big parking lot on the side, so we actually think it would work nicely for managing the complex as an overflow storage situation for even the market units. And we've discussed it, and we don't think we have any issues with those people coming in to get to a locked storage bin that would be, specific for, unit so-and-so.
So it's not going to be through the lobby, it's going to be through this other entrance?
No, other than, I guess there's some rule if you're on an ADA.
I mean, you understand, like, to put it under the garden apartments, you could have stairways down to the basement, but code requires you'd have to add an elevator. That's not an option for us. So in the seniors, what we thought was for everybody but those that would require the ADA access, there would be this exterior access to the basement for the storage. So that's the majority of the people that would use that space, and they wouldn't have to interact with the seniors in their lobby. It would only be those, isolated incidents where we have to have the ADA access, where those people would be allowed to go through the lobby of the senior housing to utilize the elevator. And we thought that's so,
We have this exact condition in Whitehall, Pennsylvania, in a 100% age-restricted deal, and there's 4 buildings on the site, and 3 of them are on slab. And, no, I'm sorry, 2 are completely on slab, and then 1, it has this exact condition, and we have all the storage bins in that one basement, and it's very controllable, and it's worked out pretty well. So we were kind of comfortable. We talked about it, trying to find all this stuff out.
How do you guys anticipate to figure out who can go through the elevator or not?
that would only be people that need ADA access.
And how do you figure out who doesn't?
Well, they would come to the lobby of the senior housing and be escorted into the.
But how do they identify that they are or not?
The residents would be identified.
We're going to have management.
Right.
So we're going to have a super plus probably 2.
So I have to come to you and say, I'm handicapped, I want to have access?
And we're going to have a leasing office with people in it, so that we're going to have staff here.
David, I'm sure you have, but maybe I don't want to come to you and tell you that I'm handicapped and I still want to get into my store. Do I have to tell you that I'm handicapped?
I would say that if somebody was handicapped and needed to have access via and they were not in the age-restricted building, then we would give them access through the card access or the key fobs to give them access to that building, but through the elevator. And that would be an exception to those people if that situation arose. And that's not a problem. It's pretty easy to control it because we have all these fancy codes and things now with the access, and we know that we get.
I got it, but at some point in time, I have to come to you and say, I'm handicapped, I would like to have elevator access to my unit, right?
Right, if you're not in the age-restricted
If I'm
building.
not in the...
Correct.
And what happens if I don't want to tell you?
That's also what you have to do in order to get a handicap sticker if you want to park in a handicap space. You do have to identify your handicap. That's just the way the world works.
But you will have limited access to all the people that will be going to the basement storage. You just can't walk in, down, open the door.
No, there would be some kind of control.
Some kind of key control or card control or something like that.
Security cameras.
Yes.
So will you hand out, let's say, a key fob or whatever? Is that what you're looking kind of to do? If you say I'm handicapped, I'd hand out a key fob, or whatever mechanism you're going to use.
And you're bringing up.
And then you would be able to
bringing up a
go.
management thing, yeah, we would have to do something, somebody who needed to use the elevator to get to the storage.
Right, but if you were in the bathroom, let's say, I wouldn't have to go and wait for you. I'd have my key, I can go in the elevator, because you've already pre-approved me to be able to do that, if I was a handicapped person.
I think if somebody came in to lease a unit.
No, I meant like on a regular basis.
I think Brian wants to know if the super is not around and somebody wants to get into their storage unit, are they able to do it on their own?
Yes.
So they have like a key fob and they can go? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what you mean, Brian?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, yes.
So Mr. Larson,
It would really be no different than handicapped access. It's not like the public, Joe Public can just go in there. There'd be security to allow people into that storage, be it a key fob or security
Depends
access.
on the level of security
Right,
you want. You
right.
can also have cards that...
We're just talking about the means of getting there is just
Exactly.
through a different quarter, yeah.
Yeah, how are we doing on the height on that age-restricted building? Are we within our,
We are. It's a 55-foot to the max peak restriction. It's 55 feet right now. It's 4 stories permitted, 4 stories proposed. And both the other structures are compliant as well. I believe the 3-story garden apartment is 45 feet, and the 2-story garage apartment is 36 feet, and compliant with the height requirements of the zone.
and Donna and I were wondering on that one unit with the garages, we didn't see any entrance doors.
Okay, so let me,
Is it only through the garage and then you have the 2 main entrances? Is that how that works?
when my draftsmen forget that we call that a born-in unit, they, no, all the doors are not necessarily seen from the front elevation. Please, so please hold it. What I'm holding up here is my filing set, sheet 7 of 13. And you can see here, this is the ground floor. There is a door here to the flat on the first floor at the back. His garage is actually in the middle one. So when he comes home, he pulls his car in, goes in through the back, arrives in the kitchen, or comes through the walkway here and enters through this door.
Okay.
The unit that is at the front above the garages has a door right here. It's on that same pad. He walks in, he walks upstairs and goes home, or pulls in his garage and has a door to that same lobby. The person with the flat to the back, the doors you saw were his doors going in here, and also with a door from this. So each has like an exterior visitor access and a
Okay.
private garage access.
Got it.
So the unit all the way to the right is the longest garage, and that's where the difference is. Is that
Yeah, so
correct?
you can
Because there's
see
no
here
hallway there.
This garage
Right.
is,
Right.
25 foot 4 deep. This is 23 foot 10 deep, and this is 21 foot deep. So this guy,
Right.
which happens to be the 1-bedroom flat, he's got the most shallow garage, but it's allowing me to get this to be sort of integrated and give everybody their own stair. But again, 21 feet, I believe your professionals will agree, is sufficient for garage depth, but it's just a little short of having extra storage. But the other units, of course, I believe do. You have more than enough room to put things in front of your car.
So they have room to park an SUV or pickup truck in
Yes.
there? Okay.
And if they have a Mini, they get a lot more storage.
You'll get an SUV in, but it's gonna be tight.
You get the SUV, and they won't be able to get out of it. Well, actually, in terms of width,
Don't get any weight.
in terms of
Yeah, let
width,
people out before pulling the garage.
so in terms of width, we did consider that a 1-car garage at 10 feet wide is tight. So these are 11 and a half feet wide, so they have a little bit more room to open your door, and that's an internal dimension.
Mr. Larson, I just had a question, just going back to the entryway into the age-restricted building. And I know on sheet 10 of your plan set that you have in your hands, that shows that the floor layouts for all those floors. Is there going to be some change on your plan for that entryway going into the north side of the building to allow other residents to enter that building in I guess in a secure manner, or to enter that building, but keep them out of the rest of the building?
That's actually, we've been considering this building further along, right, in the hopes that we can proceed. I believe there are going to end up being required doors there, right, for what's called areas of refuge, to be able to have them separated. So the answer to your question is yes, there will be other sets of doors, not only for the people coming in from the outside, but you don't necessarily want all the private entrances open. So as we develop these corridors, we're going to be adding, I guess you can call it amenities to the corridors, stops along the way, trim and like that to help, but there will also be doors.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
I just have one question. With regards to the pool, is that pool big enough to accommodate all of those apartments, that one pool? Is it going to be big enough to accommodate all those folks that will be moving in there?
I think we're 40 feet long, 20 by 40?
Yes, I mean, I remember 20 by 40 on the,
Right.
20 by 40?
on the pool for the,
That's pool.
not the age restricted pool, you're talking about the,
Right, we
Not
actually
the
kind
age
of-
restricted, yeah.
It's like
the
a
common.
trade-off of the patio around it
Yeah.
versus the pool.
And what I was going to say is that I've had the experience of both ways, where some people look at it as how much surface of pool do you get, and some look at how much space you have to lay on the shades, right? So there's a lot, this has a large area for sunning, and again, as Mike has cited, it has good eastern southern exposure to be a good deck. So I would say that in terms of a pool area, pool use, it is sufficient because of how large the deck is for the ability to accommodate people.
Okay.
I have a question, it might even be for our professionals. Did we run a check to see if we were in conformance with ordinance 21709? It talks about the percentages regarding the affordable housing. Did we meet our affordable housing obligations? And also, did we meet our percentages of the open and recreational space? For example, we have to have at least 40% of the area devoted to public or private recreational use. At least 50% of the open space shall be common open space, and not more than 20% of the open space must be devoted to the community center. Did we double check these numbers?
I went through and checked them. They appear to be correct. And as far as meeting our affordable housing obligation, this is part of the settlement with the court. And the applicant is providing all the units that were promised or required as part of the solution. So yes, it does meet that also.
Promised or required?
Well, required. Bottom line is they have to provide them, and they will. That's what's in the plan.
So Gary, if you think they're meeting all the percentages that they have to meet, then
They do.
I just want to make sure we check their numbers.
Yes, there was some things which they've indicated a willingness to adjust that we wanted to look at in a little more detail in the open space, and that is, they've indicated what they're going to keep in trees. One of the things that I wanted clarified on the site plan was not the percentages, I think they're fine there, but just what portion of the open space is going to be put in meadows, what portion is going to be in grass, so that we actually have a plan that sort of shows how that's going to be handled and maintained over the years. And they've indicated that they're going to show that on the plan, so I think we'll be okay there. But they do meet the requirements. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll open it to the public for questions. No questions, we'll move on. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next and I think final witness is our traffic engineer, Mr. Jay Troutman.
Good evening.
Just raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Jay Troutman, Troutman.
Jay, your qualifications, please.
Yes, I'm a principal with the traffic engineering firm of McDonough and Ray Associates. I've been practicing traffic engineering for 31 years, conducting traffic impact studies for various types of developments, as well as reviewing traffic studies on behalf of planning and zoning boards. And I've been accepted as a traffic expert at over 100 planning and zoning boards in the state of New Jersey, including Lopatcong Township.
Thank you. You did accept one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay, I'd like you to accomplish, well, at least three things tonight. One is a very, very brief overview of your report, and then address the traffic comments in the review letter. And then if you could just give your opinion regarding the comment about the triangle at Route 57, those three items would be helpful to us.
Yes, we did complete a fully detailed traffic impact study that was reviewed by your professionals. We have comments from both the township engineer and planner. I can tell you that we can comply with all comments and recommendations from your professionals' reports. As Mr. Ford mentioned, the project has 2 points of access, one of which is under NJDOT jurisdiction, the other one is under township jurisdiction. Mr. Ford also indicated that we've already filed a complete application with NJDOT, and they've begun their review of the Route 57 access design. I can tell you that both access intersections have adequate sight distance, sight lines for vehicles entering and exiting, as well as adequate roadway capacity for all of the turning movements. And in terms of the Route 57 access, I heard the discussion about the island. I believe that's a modification that we can bring forth to DOT during the course of the review. We can modify the design to not show an island. It will be subject to them agreeing with that. I know they do have some standard island designs for full movement driveways. It's just basically a bullnose island, so you can make all turning movements. And that's what we're showing right now, but we will revise that in accordance with the discussion that I heard earlier.
Thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Troutman. This is a conforming use, so we're not deep into traffic testimony, but we did want to present them because there were some traffic comments.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. George?
No, I have none.
No, Mr. Chairman. I'll open it to the board.
Have we given any consideration to people who may simply want to go out onto Baltimore Street and make the right on the strikers to come up to a controlled light at that intersection rather than just pulling out onto 57?
Yes, that's actually a good feature of the design. For example, maybe the age-restricted driver would prefer to go around and use the traffic signal, so any resident would have that option.
And the timing of those lights could be changed, because I've been there at 5 o'clock and it gets pretty congested in that area there. So-
Yes, I have to, and the state tends to favor their highway. They go with the philosophy of, we want to try to keep traffic moving on our highway. You might wait a while to get out there, but once you get out there, we want to keep you moving. So they kind of get protective of how much green time they give to the highway versus the side street. But we could review that timing.
And how many parking spaces do we have in those lots total, do you know?
Yes, I believe in my report. At the time I did my report, we were showing 386 parking spaces on site. I don't know if that's...
We're still at that. It's actually broken up from the senior housing has 95 parking spaces where 94 is required, and then the non-age restricted apartment section of the project requires 287 and has 288. So we're 2 in excess of what's required.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any further questions?
I have one for Mr. Ford, if I may.
Would you hold on a second? I'm just going to open up this to the public to see if we have no public, basically. So, hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions?
John, any question?
John?
I have a parking, but I just a basic question. John Betts, BTZ. With all of these apartments going up in this area, the Larkin.
John, you want to come up to the microphone?
Yeah, okay. With all these apartments going up in this area, in our area, there's quite a few. And traffic-wise and transportation-wise, what is the actual targeted tenant you expect to put in these? And the transportation of that tenant, where do you expect that tenant to transport oneself to? Or do you think they'll all be telecommuting from their apartments into some other place? That's just the basic thing. It doesn't have to do with the traffic so much, but I just want to put it on the floor. Okay, where does the source in a country where there's 160 million people who live in families that make under $30,000 a year, what do you expect to be your tenant in this high population area of apartments? That's just an open question. Nobody has to answer it.
Very generic question. I'm not sure the applicant can answer it. Yeah.
They need a sociologist.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, the market is going to govern who's going to live here. So that's the best we can do with that question.
With that said, though, Lauren Heights, right, how are you rented out there currently? Full, Tom?
Never full,
But-
but between
80?
about 95% to
Super.
98%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, that's the end of our witnesses. As I said in my introduction, we wanted to present the site plan to you tonight. I think we've done that. My experts have basically said that we will comply with the review letters. We do know we owe you some things on the minor subdivision. I need to renotice for the subdivision and the variances that are implicated by that. So it sounds like we need a new date at least for the subdivision. I leave it in the board's hands. I mean, from the applicant's point of view, we would love for the board, if the board is comfortable, to approve the site plan so we can move forward with our sewer applications, going to get our applications endorsed to Phillipsburg and then down to DEP. But in any event, we need a new date to present the minor and the variances. So I would leave those issues in the board's hand.
I don't feel comfortable with taking a vote on anything tonight yet, but we establish a new date, or when do you think they'll be ready?
Yeah, I think what should happen here, obviously it's the board's call. If you were to vote tonight, you'd have a significant number of conditions. What I think would be better, since we have a lot of revisions to the plans, is to get those revisions done so that when George and I issue our new review letters for the next meeting, there's virtually no comments left at that point, and there would be virtually no conditions related to revising the plans and doing things of that nature in the resolution. So Mr. Ford would have to have his plans revised, and Mr. Larson to a lesser extent, I would say no later than March 14th. That would give for Mr. Wisniewski and I about 9 days to get our review done and get a report out to the board. We can get a report out about 5 days in advance under that scenario. That would give Mr. Ford, he's only going to have 13 days because when he walks out of here, it's going to be tomorrow almost. So he has 13 days to get everything organized here. But, and then, we have a little less time to go through a review and get a report out. But I think that's the better scenario here.
Clean up the application quite a bit, though.
And then I think there is a council meeting a week after the March 28th planning board meeting on April 4th. And, I think the applicant can get a letter in, and the township clerk's here listening to this right now. The letter can be provided, for that council meeting to have that approval of the TWA considered at that meeting, and I'll be at that meeting myself. So, and the plans will be, should be relatively clean at that point.
Did you say that council meeting was April 4th?
April 4th, it's the first Wednesday.
And if we were able to submit revised plans, which is effectively 2 weeks, March 14th, your next planning board meeting is?
The 28th.
The 20th.
4 weeks from tonight.
The 28th, okay, gotcha.
Put you on the agenda for that.
That would be great, and we'll renotice for that date. We will do so. Yep. Is that acceptable to my consultants? We can get the revisions in by the 14th? We can. We will do so, and we will see you on March 28th.
28th.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ford, if he can hand deliver or use a delivery service to get the drawings directly to our office and to Mr. Ritter. No problem. So we have it right that day.
Thank you.
I also have our new attorney's address.
I do, yeah, we'll talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very effectively, Joe.
All right.
Don't answer, it might be a thing anymore.
No, I don't know.
Before they adjourn, I'd like to
Yes. Oh,
may I have the attention of the board, please.
I'll put them in the back there.
Hey, Michael, the chairman wants to make an announcement here.
We'll make a motion to carry this forward then. Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a second?
Second?
Yeah.
Beth, roll call, please. Roll call on a motion to carry forward to the 28th.
Members Korea,
Carry forward to the 28th.
Carry forward to the 28th.
Yes, want to make sure. Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Chesky.
Yes.
Pryor. He's not here, sorry. Snyder.
Yes.
Meeks.
Yes.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Kassak.
Yes.
Chairman Van Vliet.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, I like that. All right, we're back in session. Continue on with, close to this further business. First order of business is minutes, November 29, 2017 revisions. We had some discussion, and some of us couldn't vote on it because we weren't members at that point. But Beth, did you have the point there when we referred to a hand gesture, and that actually was a...
That's why.
I actually wanted to just bring back to the board the November 29th minutes, so you can make further clarification if necessary to the corrections for the record. Member Johnson asked to take out two statements on page 18. I gave everybody a copy of those couple pages from the minutes. He noted that they were derogatory comments by the public. It's not appropriate, put it in the meeting minutes, and he has suggested to remove them. Actually, it was resident Bentz who asked a question, who are you to say that, and who makes you the judge, and Member Schneider will not in public comment yet. So I just wanted to make the board aware it was a question, not a derogatory comment. I don't know whether you want to keep them in the minutes or not, and I'll talk about that. The other thing was, Member Schneider pointed out that there was a hand gesture made added to the minutes and felt that it was inappropriate. She compared it to somebody sneezing, rolling their eyes, standing up. It was actually part of a larger conversation. The subject of the discussion was the Highland Center study report and who was able to vote on the report and who's possibly conflicted and not able to vote on the report. Attorney Scazzaro was speaking at that point and said, and I quote, when he was talking to the former mayor, there are claims that Mayor, you had a conflict, Eric, you had a conflict, and at this point, Member Schneider raised her hand, indicating too that she was conflicted. Though it wasn't a voice, she did raise her hand to affirm that she too was part of a possible conflict. So therefore, I don't think that this should be removed from the minutes. It would alter the discussion. So I just brought those two back to you for reconsideration.
I just have, with regard to Mr. Betts, it wasn't a question asked. He didn't come up to the microphone and identify himself. He said it, he shouted it from the seats. So he wasn't asking a question. He was speaking while the meeting was going on. So it wasn't a question that he got up and asked.
Well, he doesn't have to necessarily get up. I mean, that's happened before when someone has spoken out from their seat on a number of occasions, and it was a question, it wasn't a derogatory remark, which was my point. I wanted to clarify that. And, you had, answered him. So whether or not you want to keep it in the minutes, it's fine. I'm just making a point to say that he did ask two questions.
It did occur, though.
It did occur, yes, it did occur.
Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, we put this to vote, and all the members said that the meetings would be corrected. So I don't know what we're discussing the minutes right now, since we already voted that they would be corrected.
I think by doing the correction, it altered the meaning of it.
But what did Beth
Because it
agree
wasn't-
that she was gonna correct them, and
It was
now,
indicated that it was a hand gesture or something like that, which
Yes.
could mean anything. But if you're raising your hand to say that it's an affirmative
But
answer on your part,
Right, but the minutes didn't show that conversation. So,
Well, actually, it did show the conversation. Maybe I could add that you raised your hand to affirm. I could add that one word to recognize that why you raised your hand. Maybe that would happen.
well, I would have to go back to the tape and look at it to see why I raised my hand.
And, can I No, isn't that, first of all, Carlos is right, we voted on it, which should be taken out, I believe. That's why we voted on it. I mean, I don't know why we're discussing it. Maybe our attorney can shed some light on things. If there's a vote placed on something, doesn't mean it's actually being done. And then secondly, for somebody to try to insinuate or what is the word I'm looking for? What a hand gesture means. I mean, it can mean anything. And everybody can read whatever they want into a hand gesture.
That's why we're saying we'll take out the hand gesture, if that's what it said, because I
But
didn't
we
get a
already
copy of
voted on
those
that
meetings.
last month to take it out.
But
Now
I
we're
think
talking about it again.
it alters the meaning of what was going on here. I mean, if you're raising your hand when someone asks, are you conflicted? And you raised your hand. It's not making a hand gesture with...
Well, that wasn't the question. We were talking about conflicts, and raising your hand could mean either I'm conflicted, or it could mean, hey, I have a question, I'd like to ask a question here, trying to get someone's attention. It can mean a lot of different things. I mean, if we want to revote, my vote stays the same. Those two comments by the resident and the response by Schneider, I still vote to come out, and I still vote that the raise your hand comes out. My vote doesn't change.
Why do we have to revote?
We don't have to revote. My vote doesn't change.
I'm not changing it. You know, you would have to put the whole conversation and who said and did what, and...
Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion that we revise it to indicate what actually happened, because it did happen. I'm not taking it out, and we'll have this board vote on it then.
But how can you vote on it when you weren't at the meeting?
I'm not voting on the meeting minutes, I'm voting on the revisions, which I was in attendance at.
We're voting on, so you're...
I'm only revising the revisions that this whole board looked at it. We didn't vote on the minutes. I
Right.
grant you that. However, it was brought to our attention that it may revise the meaning of what was there, as suppose I go along with if it said hand gesture, the hand gesture's out. But if it's a raising in the hand as an affirmative action to something that was before the board, I think it should remain in there.
But it's not reflecting in here. And unless you're going to put every single thing in here, it's not really, it's not really showing the true picture. That hand raising doesn't show a true picture, because I did speak as well.
This is the one and only time I have witnessed a gesture of any sort being in the minutes. This is not commonplace, and it's certainly not common for anybody but the people who were actually at the meeting to be voting on meeting minutes.
Maybe we have to, Gary, you're doing it for a long time. I mean, every eye roll, remember when we rolled his eyes is in the minute? I mean, should something like that be in the minutes?
I don't think it reflects someone, like, expressing their opinion to the situation going on. I mean, I think it would be acceptable to say, in affirmation to the action.
In affirmation in whose eyes?
I could have been raising my hand to speak. I mean, I don't know what,
That's right.
I don't know what raising my hand was at that point.
I mean, it's just best things that's what it was, but it may have not been.
I wasn't here, and I agree with that. I wasn't here, and I need to be put in position to vote.
I don't think it was here either. Otherwise, it would have said something.
If it affects, and I have to ask the vets, I don't know if we have everything here, and Donna, yes, they're both there. Why do you feel you raised your hand?
I don't know, because reading the minutes, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And I
Right.
surely don't have time to come in and sit in, or go on YouTube and watch a video to try and figure it out.
So I guess, Beth, if you're saying it does affect something,
Well, I felt it affected it, that's why I brought it forth for the board to discuss. That's just making a notation that,
So
it
is it-
wasn't clear when we had the discussion at the last meeting. It was very quick, nobody really had a chance to look at it. We were just moving things along, and the whole context of the discussion, wasn't brought about, so.
it's not affecting anything legal.
No.
It's just changing what's here. So does it really matter if it's there? No, it's what happened, it's there,
Well,
and I have to listen to what she's saying, because on your side, you don't know why you raised it. But I don't have the whole thing, so I don't.
then if that's the case, then we would all have to sit and we'll watch the minutes, and then we can determine whether I raised my hand because I was asking a question, because I was confirming something, because I was, I don't know what I was doing at that point. It's 3-4 months ago.
That's a good suggestion. Let's watch the tape all together, and then we can make a decision on what it was. Otherwise, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, every
So
time
then
somebody
take it
shakes
out
their
if it's not
head.
effective. We voted to take it out, so why...
And we already voted to take it out.
And every time somebody shakes their head no or yes, we're gonna put it in there. So this is
What
getting
she's saying,
ridiculous.
as it's changing something.
Well, that doesn't occur that every time somebody shakes their head or does anything else written in minutes.
It's never written.
Well, right, that's what he's saying.
Yeah,
It's
but
never
this
in
was,
there.
I watched it carefully numerous times since you had asked for the correction to be made. And I feel that you are making an affirmation that, yeah, I'm too, in the group of people that's conflicted. So I'm just bringing it to the board's attention.
We haven't had a second yet, but we seem to be in the discussion. Can I mention this? Mr. Bryce, you've taken a lot of depositions, right? And witnesses sometimes nod, shake their head. And to get it correctly, you say, I take that as affirmative or negative.
But it didn't.
And I would think Chairman probably should have asked. Absent that, I don't know how you can judge what was intended. As far as people from the audience, I don't know, at the hearings I've been to, the recorder usually records that as a voice from the audience. On the other hand, the person didn't come up and identify him or herself and so on. I think if you're going to have some control over the situation, you record what was part of the proceedings, and I don't think a voice from the audience constitutes that. It's just my opinion. Jim, you think that makes sense, or?
To be honest with you, I wasn't here, and I don't know the effect of what that voice in the audience said.
I think he said, says who or something like that, right?
Who made you judge and jury or something like that?
It had no value. It had no value to the meeting.
A lot of discussion up here has no value sometimes too, but...
You have a point, Joe, you have a point, and I
yeah.
did some research on this, and I looked up some legal forums, and when audience blurts out comments, the general consensus is that doesn't belong in meeting minutes. And certainly meeting minutes, we all agree, are not a transcript. So to throw in a blurt from an audience member, a one-sentence blurt to make somebody embarrassed, does not belong in meeting minutes when it has no value to the meeting.
Well, we still have the tape, correct? We have the tape. When somebody wanted to go back and do that, they can make their own determination.
You know, if I wasn't here, I
Rescind my motion.
don't think Donna responded to it, as I recall the minutes. And I wasn't here, so I'm reluctant to
I wasn't here either.
do anything with it.
I'm sorry?
I wasn't here either.
I have to ask the question, how is it going to affect if we add it or if we take it away? What is the outcome on each side?
Well, yeah, I mean, in one sense, she was saying, yes, I'm part of the conflict discussion. In another sense, she's saying I had a question, so nobody can really,
Under the conflict.
nobody can really
The
ascertain what
only
it
way you
meant.
answer it is you review the tape and you make your own opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jerry, I think it comes down to is, we had a couple of comments on the meeting minutes. There was only 3 people that were here. I think there was 4 people here, but he was no longer part of the planning board, so he couldn't vote anyway. And the only people that can vote on the meeting minutes are the 3 people that were taking part of the meeting. Everybody else has to abstain. They have to. They can't vote on the meeting minutes.
I think, though, this is, excuse me for interrupting you, Gary, I don't want to, but I think that's like a little bit of the discussion of I mean, if we have to be careful if we raise our hand, then it will be counted as a vote or a yes or a no without asking if that is really what you meant, right? Then we're like on some level, I don't know, you sit there, you nod, and in your head, and somebody sees you nodding, and it's like Brian Weeks acknowledged that it's true, or whatever. So only the spoken word should be something which is in the minutes and not I mean, if I throw my hands in the air over that project, doesn't mean I'm against it, it just means I throw my hands in the air.
I guess I have to ask the lawyer there,
Good idea.
you know, what he, you know, is that something that is, you know, how do you look at that? How do you address that issue? All right, I mean, if I'm in an auction and I nod my head, that I go for that.
You just won the ceramic toilet.
I mean, so where's that line drawn? That's where
I think that as a general proposition, minutes reflect the discussion of what occurred and what the business was before the body. It's the body that actually took that action, and only the people that were present that vote on their minutes. It's their minutes, or it's the board's minutes, who's ever eligible to vote, they get to set their minutes. So they either approve it or they modify them. To the extent that there is another record out there that may have an implication on some type of other issue, that record will still subsist. The minutes are simply as the members that participated recall the action being taken at the...
Because I wasn't on at that time, I have no right to vote there.
That is correct. That would be my opinion. That is correct.
Okay, so it's
That ends that.
eliminates,
And the video is unaltered, so the video is always there.
always there.
Subject to retention policies of the state, so.
Or how long the tape lasts.
That's true.
So, okay, I'll rescind my motion, and we'll let the corrections stand,
Okay,
okay?
I just need a clarification, thank you.
We can all have fun on YouTube if we want to, right?
There you go.
Okay, we're now on to the January 24, 2018 minutes. Has everybody received a copy of those? Are there any additions, corrections? Peter?
Since we are at the, at the minutes here and about the, I recall that when we talked about the attorney that I was speaking about, I don't know if anybody recalls, but I was talking about that the council's position would be to retain an attorney, not to have to train a new person and all these things. It's all omitted in my statement, so whatever I said is not in here.
No, it's a summarization, that's all. I didn't do it word for word. We discussed that at the last year, that any testimony by an applicant, anything with the master plan would be as verbatim as I could make it, but anything else would be summarized. So I summarized it. If you want to add something, you can certainly do that.
Beth, I just, with all due respect, I just would like to know if we either summarize or we do it word for word, but it cannot be however we feel it is.
No, that's how you discussed it last year.
Okay, so we're gonna summarize. Awesome.
You have verbatim on transcripts by applicants, as much as I can, and by the master plan, any revisions to that, very important, but anything else I was going to summarize as Attorney Scazzaro had suggested.
Okay.
I'll say.
Thank you.
So you certainly can add anything you like.
No, I'm fine.
Beth, I have no objection to Peter adding what he just wanted to add. I would like to add the following. Member Olszewski asked if we knew anything about these attorneys. Upon questioning from Member Pryor, he acknowledged he never came in to read the submissions, so I would ask that that be added. I would ask to add, Member Pryor added that he's known David Rutenberg, one of the partners at Murphy and McKeon, for over 25 years and has a lot of respect for him. And then I have a comment, and I don't know how we address this, maybe we just address it now here. Member Johnson suggested the board consider extension to the RFP process. He indicated that his rates, Tony's rates are lower, $125 an hour, $250 per meeting. That's not correct. Tony charged $150 per hour for township work. It was $250 per month, not per meeting, and we got billed for anything outside of the meeting. So he said what he said, but it's not correct, and their whole argument seems to be based on cost here.
I do agree. I said what I said. Now, I said what I said based on his contract that we had.
You look at the bills?
No, but I have his contract.
Yeah, and what's the contract say? It's not written, it's what's in the retainer.
I have, the contract that I have actually has that in there.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
I have it in front of me. Here, I'll give it to you.
Yes, please. Those are the numbers I have in his contract.
The number, but what's in the retainer? What's he do for the retainer? Does he bill for phone calls?
That I don't know.
Well, then if you looked at the bills, you'd know.
The information I shared is what I know.
Well, it's wrong. So I'll just leave it at that.
Leave it at that. I shared what I knew. I shared what I knew, which was 120, 25, and 250.
Further
And
discussion?
125, it doesn't even say that in the contract. That's for work that's handled under escrow.
Any further
All I had was
comments?
the contract in front of me. That's all I had.
Any corrections?
The contract doesn't say per meeting either, so even the contract's not
That's what
Well,
I said,
we
so.
can't- my only correction is I have no problem saying, putting into those meetings what I said, but we can't put the correction, what Joe just said, into the minutes
Well,
because
as long as it's in these minutes, that's all.
it could be in these minutes, that's fine, but it
Fine.
can't be into the minutes of January because it didn't happen.
I have a question.
Yes.
On page 2, resolution 1801, the annual meeting calendar, the second sentence just needs to be removed. That was a cut and paste area.
Joe.
Gary, I just have one more observation. When Mr. Sposaro discussed that everything should be generalized except for testimony and such, on the November minutes, nothing was summarized. It was line by line. So, we need to be a little consistent. If it's going to be summarized, then it should be summarized. It shouldn't be line for line. So, I'm hoping we can just be consistent then.
I thought Beth explained that when
Right,
Mr.
but
Pizarro indicated that on
Right,
testimony.
I didn't know for the master plan, that why it went line for line, just all discussion over the lines.
that wasn't all that.
Anyway, those minutes have already been approved. They stand approved with the corrections?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
saying, is I'm not asking to change them, I'm just saying that I hope that we can be consistent.
We will try to be. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we need, and we might not have to, I'm not worried about it one way or the other, except if we have to include that the engineer had another application, or we had another proposal in, that wasn't mentioned on the minutes.
Another proposal for what?
We had two engineers.
Two
submit.
engineers.
Do we want to mention that? We did
You
talk about it at the
can,
meeting.
yeah. I think it would probably be appropriate.
It might be in our best interest to mention that.
All right, so I'll make that correction. There were two proposals.
CNP, actually.
Yeah.
Any further corrections? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved. Okay, we have, next order of business is pay-to-play law,
I just wanted-
RFP process.
Mr. Chairman, if I real quick, what I was referring to, that I didn't have a copy with me, Joe just shared with me. What I had, the only information I had when I was talking in last January, which was the contract that I had with our previous attorney, was what Joe just shared with me, and it was 125 per hour at public meetings, and 150 per hour for any and all litigation, and 250 for a month retainer fee. And I may have misspoke, but this is the only contract. And
No, second,
the second one?
you can read that and it's subject to interpretation. He is billed 150 per hour for all services. That second paragraph refers to escrow, things under application.
Applications for development.
Yeah.
Yep, and monthly retainer fee of 250 for each and every month. Yep. So I may have misworded. Those are the two numbers I had in front of me, and so I may have gotten the wording mixed up a little bit, but those are the numbers I had in my head. So I apologize if I didn't get it exactly correct. Thank
It
you.
happens.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, Beth, you have the pay-to-play law?
Yes, I just wanted to...
Beth, you'll have to speak up for me a little bit, please. There you go.
I just wanted to let everybody know that the pay-to-play law was enacted in 2004. It was amended in 2005 and became effective in 2006. And since that time, the township has put out RFPs under the fair and open process. And we've had submissions for all the professionals since that time. Our former chairman, Eric Johnson, mentioned at the last meeting that he didn't think that Tony had submitted an RFP, and that's why I'm bringing it up. I wanted to put that on the record so that anybody going forward realizes that we do have submissions for all of our professionals as required by law. That's all.
Maybe I could add to that, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, there was debate over the last procurement, whether we should extend this or not. I'll just point out there were lots of conversations with Mr. Sposaro following procurement. He called Katrina. He called Beth. He called Gary. He said it might have been an oversight by his secretary. Evidently had a conversation with Eric. And Eric said he didn't have to because there was nobody else in. That made no sense, because if there was nobody else in, how does he know he was the only one? I don't know. It makes no sense. Had a conversation with Donna. Donna questioned you about a conversation. She said, why would Mr. Pissarro tell a bold-faced lie? I don't know. I'm not saying anybody did, but if we go back to March 9th, Chairman Johnson, at the time, I questioned the propriety of having a meeting without our attorney present while we're in the middle of litigation. He said our attorney gave his opinion that he did not need to be here for this workshop meeting. Following the meeting, I got an email from Tony, and he mentioned, he says, I was not at the last planning board meeting, the one I was asked not to attend. And he followed up with a statement in the minutes repeating that again. So obviously there's a problem there. I'm not saying anybody's lying, but people get in a conversation. I think sometimes they hear what they want to hear. And then when that gets relayed a second time, it gets worse. So sometimes we hear what we want to hear, sometimes we simply don't remember. Ms. Snyder couldn't remember if she left the first meeting once or twice. Tonight she couldn't remember why she raised her hand. So
That's not true.
can she really remember? What? You just said it.
No, I didn't. I said, I don't know. I would have to go back and look at it to see what I did 4 months ago.
All right. same
Okay?
thing.
Do you remember everything you said at every single meeting, Joe? Probably not. And the first meeting, let's get that straight too, okay?
No, let's get it straight. Did you leave once
Yeah.
or twice?
He left his iPad on the seat. He was leaving. I grabbed it and handed it to him and came back in.
You were out in the hall, and you were absent for testimony. He was qualifying a witness. If you were in the jury box, would you get up and chase an attorney out in the hall?
Really, Joe? It's an iPad that I had to give him, okay?
He's
But
got
he left
an
it
audience
here.
full of people.
They
If
left.
that's your story, that chasing an attorney out in the hallway with an iPad is more important than listening to testimony?
That's not true, Joe.
Is that
You
what you're
made it.
saying?
No, Joe, that is not what I'm saying, okay?
Then what are you
Let's
saying?
just forget it, all right? No, because I'm not going to go into this with
All
you,
right,
because...
well, forget it, and I want this verbatim in the minutes.
Yes, verbatim in the minutes. Let's go. Let's do it.
And I invite any of you,
You know what, Joe?
I invite all of you
Hold on.
to get the tape of that meeting, to open it,
Yes, 'cause
and
that's
watch
so
what she did,
important.
and you make your own decision.
It is. So you already did that. You had your friends do that. But let's...
No, I
let's-
did it myself.
Yeah, you had
And
to...
I watched
no,
it
you
myself.
No, if you recall, you said you had a member of the public came to you because they
I didn't have
opened
a
it.
member, I said a member contacted me,
Right.
and I did it myself.
No, that's not what you
Can I
said.
just, you know,
But let's go, okay? This was my first
you leave
meeting.
once or twice?
No, hold on. It was my first meeting. I had no training yet. I had no idea that by getting up and giving a man an iPad he left on a chair was cause for you to lecture me at the next meeting.
Why didn't you say that? at
I
the
did
time?
not, remember I got up 2 times.
We had a chairman here. Do you let somebody walk out of the meeting and not say
Whatever.
anything?
Whatever, Joe. Just, go ahead.
Okay, whatever.
Go ahead. I'll make sure I do verbatim too.
Carl?
No, I just wanted
is
to
that
know
going to
if
be
it's,
summarized?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if it's okay for a member and Mr. Pryor to ask that these be verbatim.
Ask what?
To ask that this will be taken word by word, or is something that has to be put to a vote?
No, I want this discussion because it's been
Because
like
we
the
just
fourth
said it,
discussion
our
on it.
discussions will be just summarized.
And
We
now
just
you
had
have
that
to
debate,
be-
and Peter wanted things added in. I want this added in.
Peter doesn't want anything.
He didn't
You know,
ask that.
I would like to get to what we're supposed to be here. Everybody's spending their time. You may have nothing better to do, but why can we not go and move on and do the...
Tony explained this to you in
I mean, I
depth.
know it's important to you, but really it's only important...
Tony
to you.
explained this to you in depth. He said, if you don't take verbatim minutes, there's a summary involved, and a summary involves judgment. And every time a summary comes up, somebody questions that's judgment or everybody else's judgment.
Back in 2016, I think it was, 15 or 16, John.
So I'm requesting this discussion be in there.
You remember, Gary, you were the chairman of the board, and Attorney Spizzari said that the minutes should contain as much as they can, because, you know, they're easy, you know, for you to go back and, you
There were
know,
numerous
call,
times
you
that we
know,
had to
you
go
don't have
back
to call, you
to
know what happened.
indicate what happened with who said what, and especially in testimony.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
ask
in the
you-
minutes.
Let me ask
too,
the
where-
attorney a question. Minutes, tape. We go to court for some reason. We have the tape. It's all there.
Yeah, there are times when the tapes actually fail and the courts can actually rely on minutes if they're comprehensive enough.
Okay.
And it settles the record. So I can understand why there would be guidance to suggest that when you have some type of application before the board where you're taking testimony and evidence, you would like your minutes to be as comprehensive and as accurate as possible. When it comes to other business of the board, it makes sense to me from a qualitative perspective, if it's routine business, that can be a summary of what the board's discussion or action was at that point in time.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, I have to jump in on that one because there's some false information that was told about me. Yes, Joe, I did talk to Anthony. I talked to him in January, and I called him up and I said, Tony, you didn't submit a proposal. What, you know, what's going on here? He said, I missed the deadline, that was my mistake. And he said, well, I didn't have to submit it last year because I was the only one. I just had to submit a letter because all my rates stayed the same. I didn't actually submit a package. And I said, well, okay, well, you know, is there a possibility of an extension? And then I was informed that no, he was informed by somebody else that an extension would not be granted. But yes, I did talk to Tony, but never once did I tell him, don't submit an RFP because you're going to be the only applicant. Never once did that happen.
Well, yeah, nobody's
I don't know
proven
how-
that anybody else has either.
I don't know how you got that information.
I didn't
But
say
yes,
that.
I thought that's what you just said.
No, what did I just say? I read what came from the last minutes. It was a different, he said that he didn't have to submit one. Beth, you want to read that back? I think I said one line about,
So did he submit one last year?
Yeah, he did.
He told me he only submitted a letter of interest because he didn't have to
You
submit.
reviewed them yourself, you came in to review them.
That's my point. We're relying on conversations, sometimes second-generation conversations, and they're all over the place.
Right. So
All right.
yes, but you're right, I did talk to Tony and he said, yes, I flat out forgot to submit it. And he told me he did because last year he didn't have to.
And what you said about him not submitting, you said that last meeting.
Yeah, I did.
All right,
He
and
did.
that's all I said.
And he said it was his fault.
That's all I said.
I missed it, it's my
So
fault.
he's got five calls after the deadline. It's almost like my granddaughter asking her mom or dad,
I didn't
me,
call him.
you know, whatever,
I didn't call him.
making the rounds. He called you. It's
No, he
another
didn't. No, he didn't.
Well, I thought you said you talked to him.
No.
Where'd you get your information?
Through an email. I
Pardon me?
talked to him. So don't...
An email with Tony?
Yeah.
All right, you had a communication,
Well, it wasn't from me.
but it came from him?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm okay with that. He reached out. Did he call you, Eric, or did you call him?
Oh, I called him because I was kind of curious why he didn't submit the.
All right, so he called four people and he had a conversation with Eric, all after procurement was over. I mean, that's a problem. What's the common denominator there?
I didn't talk
Us?
to him.
I don't think so.
I think we did right, I think we stayed where we're at.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought you had said, I never told him not to submit.
So far.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
We're down to he said, she said, so. Moving on, we have the executive contracts for the engineer, planner, and attorney to be approved. I'll approve those. Beth, do we need a motion to vote on those?
I believe that you already did it by way of resolution.
Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I've signed the resolutions, Beth. You need them. Okay, review suggested planning board procedures. We've had some difficulties, like observed, and I've had discussions with our new attorney about putting together procedures to be incorporated with the ordinance that basically created the planning board, what we can do, what we can't do. And he indicates to me that he can write up a comprehensive guidebook so we all have the same information coming up to indicate what we're allowed to do, what we shouldn't be doing, procedures to follow when we're doing other things. And he indicated that he possibly could have that available by the next meeting we're having here for us to review and go over. So I think that's the best way to proceed here to get things, because there's, as you said, Donna, when you came in, you're a brand new member of the board, no training, nothing going anywhere, really nothing to refer to on what your actions are or can't be done. So I think this is a good idea to go with putting these things in. So is there any other suggestions or comments on doing something like that?
I think it's a terrific idea, and Jim, you offered to do this under the retainer, right?
That is correct.
Great, super.
I have model rules that I've used for other boards that...
I'd like to make a motion that we request our new attorney to do that for us.
Make that motion.
Second?
I had Pryor as the motion. Peter, would you second it?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays?
Mr. Chairman, we can even add to that, if there could be clarification from on the planning board, are we considered more volunteers or more employees? And if we can get the appropriate employee or volunteer manual from the township, I think that would be great for everybody to have as well.
You're actually officials.
Okay. So if there's a township document that would be appropriate for us to have as well, that would be...
I don't know.
No, there is nothing on officials.
Nothing on officials.
I'm not willing to go in and try to create one.
No, I'm certainly not suggesting that.
I would also like to add, if there's a way for new members, because I had no idea I needed to go to a training class. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how to do it. I had to find out by actually another member telling me I had to do it. If there can be some sort of package for new people on boards where everybody could know what they're supposed to be doing once they've been appointed to a board.
There's steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, generally when new members are appointed, the board should be telling them what to do for their educational requirements.
So the procedural booklet would be nice.
Yes.
Yes. No, I just like to mention to the new members, I joined this in April 6th of last year. And at the end of this year, actually at the beginning of this year, I found a notice that I'm fined $100 because I didn't file
Financial report.
a disclosed financial form.
That happened to me too.
To my knowledge, that was the first time I received
No, you have received notice, we have communication.
I never received the email.
He was not on the email.
And,
He wasn't on the
you
email.
were even warned a second
I have it.
time before the fine.
I mean,
It's
I
just
asked,
automatic with us anymore. It used to be you had
Can
to
I
fill them out
finish,
by
please,
hand, now you
Mr.
can fill them out online.
can I finish, Mr. Chairman? I just want to know, like, it's good that they try to say something to the new people, say, okay, you have to fill out this financial disclosure form. It should be something that if you are going to be a volunteer, it should be also listed in the volunteer form, that you will have to do this. That way you know it and you are not on what I am. I asked for showing emails that you sent to me, telling me that I have to fill this out. I have not received one email
I don't know, Phyllis said
at
that
all.
she sent them, so.
That shows.
She
that-
did send it, but he wasn't on it.
I will give you those communications, Carlos.
No, Beth, let me say this and...
Yes.
And I have meetings here, that's the thing. I came to meetings after you have notices. And why is it that something, I'm a corporation. I send emails to people. When I don't hear from them, what do? I pick up the phone and I talk to them. I came to a lot of meetings after
Do that with the state of New Jersey.
April, and no time somebody came to me and said, Carlos, you need to fill out this form.
Yeah, Carlos, we can't change the past, can only change the future.
Yes.
So my recommendation, whatever you want to do with it, would be put it in that book, so everybody knows it, put it in there, it has to be done every year.
Yeah, by the April.
Yeah, the volunteers
It
are
takes
wrong.
care of everything, now you're aware of it, there's no excuse.
Yeah, we didn't get any reminders
I can't
this
go
year.
backwards, I can only go forwards.
Yeah, I know that,
just
that's what I'm mentioning. I'm mentioning it right now because I don't want the new people that just joined to be on my same shoes a year from now.
I think Jim will confirm this, but most volunteers are classified as employees, and they have a lower standard. We're officers, we have a different code of ethics. Well, we have the same code of ethics, I guess, but different, we have to do the financial reporting, and there's some other obligations. So.
I have to do it for my position.
Yeah.
That's superintendent.
And I have to do it for mine as
I'd be surprised if it didn't go out. I've seen Phyllis remind people and so on. And it's self-reporting, you do it on the internet now.
If you're looking at an email and it's going to send it to you, all you're getting is a reminder that you have to go online with the Department of Community Affairs
Right.
and register with them. And then you're able to fill out the form.
And we did get an email from Phyllis reminding us, but Carlos wasn't on it. I have the email, he wasn't on it, I checked for him.
Not all on
I
the
only got one.
Phyllis or Beth that you're going to get this form. All she's doing is you have to go on and obtain it
Yes,
yourself.
he's aware of that, but he didn't even know
Oh,
to begin with. He didn't get the original email.
He did get an email, but I was off with that on record.
I don't know.
I don't know, I didn't see it on there.
But
You don't
email
have
is
to
a
see
tricky
it.
thing, you know? I said email is a tricky thing, and it's my business, I do that. And I remember when you told me that you said you cannot send me an email? I'm getting email from other people all the time. I don't know where it hangs. Sometimes it disappears, sometimes it ends up in
You should send
spam.
me one then. and
All
I'll
sorts
take
of
a
things
look
happen
at
with email, just because you send it, right? And I don't mean, that doesn't mean Carlos actually gets it. You may think he gets it, but it's not like, you don't get any confirmation from people. There's no guarantee that email always arrives. It's not.
So some people ask for read receipts.
Right, or print it out, print a copy of the local finance notice that they get and put it on everybody's desk. So this way, everybody has a copy of the local finance notice.
So you just sit up there and you said, take me away.
That's how you get more feelings.
All right, at that point, if there's no further discussion on that, we'll authorize our attorney to start that production, and if we get back, we'll take a look at it and make any corrections to it, suggestions that we made. Thank you. We're to the point where we all always look forward to, the public comment. So, John, do you have anything? Nope.
Be disappointed if I didn't see it, John.
I have the same problem with all corporations and with all email. And in many, many corporate agreements, they go through email to make agreements with you. And in the last 2-3 months, I have had 3 situations where email have created situations between corporations and individuals. The emails pile up unbelievably, and there's got to be a better way. But the basic corporate structure accepts that in its way of doing business, and that's all I'll say with open-ended like that.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, you know why?
That clown